Of the producer and does not necessarily reflect the views or policies of CATV2, Oshkosh Community Media Services, the City of Oshkosh, or Time Warner Cable.
Hi everybody, welcome to another edition of Eye on Oshkosh. I'm Cheryl Hentz, and we're continuing on this show with our interviews of candidates in the upcoming 2015 spring election. Our two guests tonight are both running for the Oshkosh Area School District's Board of Education. We have incumbent Allison Garner in the blue over here, and the challenger for another of the open seats is Kelly Olmsted, and she's seated right next to me. There are 3 seats available. There are 4 candidates on the ballot, one of whom has dropped out, but it was not done in enough time where she could get her name off the ballot. So you're still welcome to vote for her if you choose to when you go to the polls on Election Day. Jim Evans is the other candidate, and we interviewed him on a most recent show. So anyway, thanks very much for being here, ladies. We appreciate it. And my co-host on this edition is a familiar face to most people in Oshkosh, I think, journalism professor Miles Maguire from the University of Wisconsin at Oshkosh. So thanks for being here. We appreciate it.
Great to be here. Thanks.
We always start out by asking candidates to tell us a little bit about themselves and why they're doing this. And you've been at this a while, so why don't we go ahead and start with you, and then we can get to Kelly.
Well, I'm doing it for the money, really.
Oh, of course. Aren't you all?
I've heard. Yes, a lot. Well, I am still going to be doing it. I started 4 years ago because I was an angry parent. That's how I got into this deal. But having been on the board now for 4 years, I have grown to love being on the school board. I've got a very soft spot in my heart for the school district now. I feel very, what's the right word? I've got a lot at stake now. I've been in it for long enough. So I want to continue. I have a lot of balls or a lot of irons in the fire, and I want to keep going. So that's why I'm running again.
Okay.
I'm running. I recently left my job, my career, and wanted to be more with my family and wanted to do more in my community. I wasn't quite sure where. I started years ago with the Lakeside and Green Meadow situation and worked with that. I was on the PTO for a while and did a lot of stuff with the schools. I do have 3 children in the district in 3 different levels, high school and grade school and in between. So I have a very, very huge invested in the community, and I enjoy the community. So I just thought that my next step would be to give back to the community, and the school board seemed to be a good fit for me. And it's like Allison, it's close to my heart. It's important to me, obviously, because I do have kids there. So
one of the things, and Allison, you've been on a number of times. The most recent was when I wasn't here.
Yes, yes.
I was recovering from surgery. But what I've always admired about you is you've not pulled any punches, even if you've gone against the grain of the district or the grain of the superintendent or other administration. You've not held back, and you're not just a yes woman. There's not a rubber stamp that is associated with your name.
Right.
And I've always appreciated and admired that, because I think that's a rarity in any politics, whether it's at a local level or not. So what, you kind of covered it in your intros or your little mini bios, but what skill sets do you both bring to the board? Because obviously you're going to get elected. So I don't say if you're coming to the board. Well, strange things could happen,
right,
yes. But what do you feel that you have to offer to the district?
I feel I'm just an average parent. So I'm going to bring my life experiences of just the values of the community to me are what I want to bring to the district, to the school board. I don't have, I just would think that being a traditional parent and being involved and having the students be number one and having just that basic knowledge of of a homeowner in the city, being invested in the community, and bringing my own life experiences to that, would be hopefully help.
Okay. Allison?
I bring, it sounds a little conceited, and I don't mean it that way, but I feel like I bring a little bit of discipline to the board, that there's a lot of things that we all want, and there's a lot of people asking the district to do certain things, and they're all great ideas, and I want to do all of them. And so the ability to take that information and boil it down into, here's the things that we should do, here's the things that we can't afford, here's a way to maybe find a middle ground, bringing some discipline back to those decisions. That's what I hope I can continue to bring to the board.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So this is obviously an unusual election in that
Yes.
looks like you're going to win. But let's assume that wasn't the case, and you had to campaign and you had to really differentiate yourself. Start with you. How would you differentiate yourself?
Okay, well, I'm the only one that is currently on the board,
Okay.
so I would set myself apart there that I have 4 years of experience. And I have a lot of successes under my belt. I've been there for the Oaklawn rebuilding. I was there for the referendum. I was there when Act 10 came along. I was there when VGoot stepped down and we didn't renew that contract. So I've been there all along, and I think that now I feel like I'm in a position now to continue working forward with the administration that we have. We have a lot of the right people in a lot of the right positions, and I'm ready to keep moving forward. So I have a lot of traction, a lot of momentum, more so than the other two candidates.
Okay. Kelly?
This thing that sets me apart, I think, is because I think I bring a different perception to the board. I bring my own experiences from the board. Having been involved in the schools and doing things with the PTOs and listening to the parents a lot and involved in the parents, that's mainly where my experience comes from, is the parents and the families and how everything that's affecting them. I was involved with the Lakeside and Green Meadow, and I was on the design team for that, entering that new school. That's going to give me a little bit more background from the other people that might have run, from being able to bring those, just being more involved in the school, being more involved with what the parents want. I was involved in a lot of those phone calls we made. We sat for hours and hours and made phone calls. We partnered with UW Oshkosh with a lot of helping us with writing those, the scripts on those and what the community wanted, and we did all those, so I have a lot of background with those things, with the community, mainly with the parents.
Okay.
So I think I can bring a lot of their values to the school board.
Okay. Great.
Okay. Well, I know that you probably have a budget and money on your list. I certainly do. We recently, since I taped the last show with candidate Jim Evans, we've recently heard that the district is potentially facing a budget shortfall or a deficit of $4.7 million. Yes. Candidate Jim Evans, after he appeared on this show, called me on a blog, very naive, for asking the question, or even having the temerity to suggest, hey, where would you make cuts if you have to make cuts? I think it's Mr. Evans who is extremely naive for thinking that no one's going to ask that question. I understand that probably no one has seen the upcoming budget. You won't see that yet probably for maybe 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
But you have to. It would be terribly irresponsible to not have some idea of where cuts are going to come. I'm not asking for amounts that you would cut or any real specifics. Maybe it's just an across-the-board 10% cut in every area. I don't know. Yeah. But where do each of you think cuts are going to have to be made, because clearly something's going to have to be done, especially when we have Governor Walker. Let's see, what's the latest that he's doing here? He's wanting to expand the statewide voucher program. Let's see, he's taking money away from all kinds of things within the private school system and the public school system. So, that doesn't help you any.
Right. No.
So what do you ladies think?
Go ahead.
Thanks. I'll take the hard one. In the real, in La La Land, obviously I wouldn't want to take anything away from anything. My first choice will always be to cut, if we have to do cuts. They would always be that would least impact any student achievements, whether it's academic or athletic or arts. Students would always come first. Their education, their achievements, making global citizens and making global students would always be the number one for me. And that's where I want to come as a parent and as a community. If the kids do better, your community does better. I would hope that we don't have to make as many cuts. I did look at the what was supposed to happen, worst case scenario, and I would try really hard to look at facts to make money, to bring in revenue. We have the choice schools. We have 100 kids that leave open enrollment. I try very hard to bring them back, to try to recruit those students back to the district, to bring them, keep them here. But it's a vicious cycle.
Sure.
So I bring them in, but then we have to spend money on what those children need in the district.
Right.
And then we spend money on that, and then you lose money. So it is just a vicious cycle. You've got to have what each student wants and what each family wants, or you lose the kids. But so you have to spend money there. So you can't make cuts on that stuff. So it is just a vicious cycle. I am not, and I'll be very honest, I am not by any means know that budget. I'm coming in very new.
Right.
I don't know the ins and outs of the budget, but I will absolutely sit down and look over every single line, and I will listen to people. And what's important to one person is not going to be important to the other person. So as a collective community, what's best for everyone and what works?
Right.
What's going to be okay?
Attracting students to the school district, clearly I think that's needed.
Yeah.
Do you have some sense of how you would go about doing that?
I know that the district put together a
Survey.
Thank you, of the top things that why people are choosing. I would start there and dissect that, and start there with why are they choosing to leave for convenience, and what can we help with convenience? Why are they leaving for safety reasons, or whatever reasons that they're leaving? What's entailed in those, so that we can bring that back and fix those, hopefully within a budget.
Sure. Well, the other thing that I liked about what you said is, you would look at cuts that don't affect the students the most. Unfortunately, no matter where you cut, it's going to affect a student.
Yes.
If you cut with staff, with faculty, that's
students.
going to affect students.
Absolutely.
If you cut certain programming, while it may not affect all students, it's still going to affect a bunch of students. And that's a very unenviable position
I
that
know.
any member of the school board is in. But I appreciate that you're at least willing to look at things rather than just say, like Mr. Evans did, we're just going to have to go to referendum to keep things going. That's not the answer. It may be an answer one or two times.
Right.
But it's not the answer overall. Right. Because sooner or later, the voters are going to say, you know what, our referendum well is dry.
Yes.
Figure out something else. So you've been at this a while.
Yeah.
So where would Allison Garner make some cuts if she needs to?
Well, a new piece of information that we have is that we have, I think, 360 new hires since Act 10.
Okay.
So those are teachers who are now working without a contract.
They're all teachers?
The 360, new teachers.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And they're operating without a contract. And so there may be some levers that we can move in terms of benefits, long-term benefits, maybe retirement-type benefits for them. That opens us up. Again, our number one goal on our strategic plan was to make sure that all of our teachers feel appreciated. So that's not something that I don't want to, just say, okay, we're just going to go after those new teachers, or we're going to, make sure they don't get any pensions. But there is something that maybe we can do there, and maybe it could be a short term that maybe we, if we were to get more funding later on, we could then build that back up. But that would be a long-term liability thing. I still am not a big fan of all the purchase services that we have, and I know that's not very popular. I understand why we have purchase services, and I understand that a lot of the things that we do farm out are things that we can't do in-house, but I still want us to, I want to carve that down. Every year I want to get it to a place where I feel like we have to absolutely have all those things, and I'm not there yet.
So for people who don't understand,
yes, good point.
What is that? I'm assuming you're, rather than having it provided in-house, you're going outside and you're doing outside contracts for that.
So for example, something that we wouldn't want to do in-house is to have our elevators, they have to come in and inspect them. I don't want to do that in-house. That should be done to an outside firm who would take on any liability if something went wrong, right?
Sure.
I'm okay with that. But things like ELL services, I don't think that that's necessarily something that we can, or that we should farm out. I'm not sure. There are some other services, we hire a lot of consultants, and I'd like to kind of maybe dial back on that a little bit.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, so those are the two biggies.
Okay.
Well, when you mentioned benefits and the new hires, isn't part of the reason why you have new hires is that people have gone to teach in other school systems?
We lost, after Act 10, we lost 100 teachers that year. Just to tell you, we have about 850 teachers total. So that's a huge percentage of our teaching that teachers that we lost in a single year.
Right.
And then we see very high turnover after teachers are with us for 1 to 2 years. If they make it to 5, they usually stay. But between 1 and 5, for some reason, there's just a lot of turnover, So what we've done with our compensation plan is to bring everybody up. Our lowest compensated employees are now brought up just a touch so that we can at least compete with our surrounding districts salary-wise. Obviously, salaries and benefits are going to be our biggest, that's what people are going to come here for.
Right.
So we have to be in line, you're right, but if we're broke and we have to start cutting, we do have the ability. It doesn't mean that we should, but we do have the ability. The other thing I wanted to say about the budget is we have finally built up our fund balance. And one of the things that I know teachers like us to think about every year is, would the board ever consider using fund balance to fix some of our deficit problems? And I always want to say that we look at it every year. I promise. We argue, we fight, we gnash our teeth. And there may come a time that we do decide as a board, all 7 of us, to take money out of that fund. So that's not off the table. It comes up every year. So I want to make sure that that too is all part of the deal.
So your fund balance, is that kind of like a rainy day fund?
It's more, yes, you can call it a rainy day fund. It's used basically for cash flow.
Okay.
And we need it to make payroll. And we don't have enough in it, so we have to take out loans to make payroll. And it's short-term borrowing, and that's really nice when we have 1 to 2% interest rates. But there's also going to come a day when that's not going to be the case. And we should have, we should be able to fund our liabilities.
When you talk about borrowing, what is the district's rating as far as being able to borrow? Because I know the cities has just recently dropped. Their rating has dropped a little bit, which means it's costing us more to borrow money from a city standpoint.
No, we are. I think we're very good, and I'm not sure whether is it AA or AAA. I can't remember.
I think AAA is best. Yeah.
Okay, I think that we're AAA, and I know that we took a bump up after we built Oaklawn. It looks good when we build a new school, and then we just passed enough. So yeah, we're in very, very good shape.
Okay.
Cool. Good.
Thanks, like us.
So, but when we talk about budget cutting, and we're talking about that a lot, I think back, I dial back a couple of decades ago, and we didn't. I mean, education was like mom and apple pie. It was just, that's good.
We're just there.
So what's happened? Has education become too expensive? Is it an accountability problem? Is it some political shift?
Okay. Oh, wow. It's
how do we end up here?
To answer all of your questions. Yes, and yes. I feel like when I do my own research on education, it really starts back with the No Child Left Behind. That suddenly there was this national attention on, we've got kids that are graduating high school that can't read. Okay, generalization. But, all of a sudden it was an alarm. And it was a crisis. And what are we going to do? We can't have kids not being able to read. We can't be graduating kids, that don't have the skills that we need. And so then, then the government gets really involved, and we're going to make it better, and we're going to fix this system. And I think that when that happens, maybe things get pretty inefficient. When you have one central entity trying to then control local communities, I think things gets expensive. Now, the rules that we have in our school district, the way we have to operate, and the regulations and the testing and the curriculum and, you know, what teachers, the licensures, everything that we have to do just to operate a school district for children is very overwhelming. And that's an expensive way and very inefficient way to run. It's a huge monolith. I mean, it's a super tanker. This system has always been slow to move, and I get that. But there's just a lot of focus on it. Obviously, costs have gone way up. I know in the past 4 or 5 years that I've been watching, our health insurance costs, which are, okay, so 80% of our budget is salary and benefits, and health insurance is part of that. 10 to 13% increases each year.
Every year, yeah. This year it will
It'll be 8.
Yeah, 8%.
And now we have a clinic, we have an on-site clinic, which is going to hopefully
That should make a
Help
be
difference.
able
alleviate some of
to
that.
keep that. But when those increases, I mean, we've all felt it in our own homes,
Right.
that health insurance is going through the roof, and, you know, some of us can't afford it. So those are the two biggies that I see.
So Kelly, how do we turn that around? I mean, or is it that we have to cut the budget? Is it that we, or do we have to change public perceptions? Is it that we need to break the control that the federal and state governments are trying to impose?
I think that if the school districts had a little bit more control themselves, they'd be able to control their own what they need. I think there should be standards. You know, there should be standards across the board so that when families move from place to place, you have a standard of learning. But I think if the districts had more control over their own community and what they need in their community so that all of their students can be global students and all of their students can, you know, they have their own goals. They want this percentage of high school graduation. They want, or whether they want STEM schools or they want charter schools or they, you know, each system in itself, if they had, I think, more control, I think the budgets won't get so crazy. I agree with Allison that the government gets involved and has all of these standards. The safety standards alone, I can't even imagine how much those cost. All of this has to be up to code. You know, that is just gone in its own, you know, it's ballooned into its own identity by itself, is everything's so mandated, and we're expected to pay for all those mandates that we have no control over. So where do you find the money for them? And I agree absolutely that healthcare, in my own household, our healthcare changed this year for the first time in years, and it's hard. It's absolutely difficult for us too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and that's why I think, you know, it becomes so important that the budget get reined in somehow.
Yes.
You know, not at the expense of anyone necessarily in particular, but, you know, all of us sitting here at this table are all taxpayers and we're all homeowners, and our budgets aren't going up, our household budget and our income is not going up nearly as much as the school districts, the cities,
Yes.
the universities, what have you. And at some point, we're just not going to be able to afford to own a home,
Right.
you know, because our taxes are just going to be through the roof. And I find it very irresponsible of our governor to, you know, I mean, public education, K through 12, is constitutionally
yes.
mandated. It's constitutionally mandated. And yet he comes along and just chisels away at every chance he gets and thinks nothing of it, apparently. And yet then you're supposed to figure out what to do with it. Now you guys have the luxury, if you want to call it a luxury, of being able to even approach the electorate by saying, we're going to have to go to referendum on this. The city can't do that. The county can't do that.
Right.
The colleges can't do that. And maybe that's a good thing, but, you know, I mean, you guys at least have that ability, whether the taxpayers approve it or not.
Right.
But this is a tough nut to crack.
It is.
Another question for you. So, as a teacher, you know, when I go into the classroom, typically I can sort of divide the students into 3 groups. There's, you know, the ones who are there and ready and high achieving. There's sort of a bunch of students who are there on, you know, any given day. They're there, and sometimes they're not so much there. And then there's the students sort of at the tail end of the distribution, and they're the ones that we typically call at risk. But it seems to me, particularly in the high schools and the middle schools, all 3 groups are at risk. That, you know, you can have very intelligent students, but if they're not engaged in the classroom, you lose them. And of course, the ones in the middle, they can be lost. So, what's the school district doing to sort of address across the board that at-riskness, as you might say?
Well, I know what I'm not part of the school board, so I know parts of what they're doing, but what I would want to do I think everybody knows, or I believe, and I think most people believe, that students who their families are involved in their education achieve higher grades and strive better. So I would really want to work on the communication and the relationship and the partnership with their families and with the community. If their families, whatever it may be, then we need to go out to a community or someplace, another grouping to help those students. There's so many groups in Oshkosh. There's the Young Leaders with the Chambers. There's the Boys and Girls Club. There's so many groups that you can go to if the family's unable to help them, and be support that they need to have. I think that's community. That is one of the main things that we need to do, is get the family involved, because then you have both sides holding that child accountable and wanting to, most children want to do better. Most children want to. And so if they have that, both forces at school and at home and in their community, all three forces, overall you'll have better students and achieve that,
It's hard, though, to get parents
Very.
involved.
Very hard.
And I'm not sure if you've thought about how you might go about doing that. I've talked to teachers, I know some teachers, and they say that fewer and fewer parents are coming to parent-teacher conferences these days, whether it be because they just simply don't have time. A lot of folks are working 2 jobs.
Yes.
And both parents in a household are working when you have both parents in a household. Or they just don't have an interest. I mean, I would like to think it's that they don't have time.
Right.
But unfortunately, there is a faction out there that probably just doesn't have
And that's
an
what
interest.
I was saying.
So how do we get them interested?
It comes down to, and I don't want to put more on a teacher's plate. They have got a tough job, and we keep putting stuff on their plates, and everybody keeps putting stuff on their plates, and they don't have enough time as it is. But maybe in the fall, they have these getting to know you meetings now, and they're fabulous. I like them. They ask everybody to come in. They ask the parents. You fill out a form. You actually get to know them, and that's kind of a newer. I really like that. I think that's great. I think that's an easy way for teachers to get to know the parents, and they're going to know at the beginning of the year what they have to entail with that student and their family. I think that those maybe should continue. I know that a lot of the parent-teacher conferences, like you said, that the parents aren't coming like they used to, the beginning of the ones, and then you don't necessarily have to go them. It's a discretion of the teacher if they need to come. And I'm sure the children that need it, the parents are coming, I would hope, like you said. So somehow the communication, and that was the big, if the family is unwilling, or maybe they're scared. There's some parents and some families that just don't know any better. You just don't have that information. You don't know. So giving them those material of, this is how you can get involved. And this is, we don't have no expectations of you, but this is where you can come in, or this is what you might like to do. If that is absolutely not an option, then those kids, the community could help. Those other special programs I think could come in and help those where that there's just not that at-home help. And that is, it absolutely, that will be there. Those parents that, unfortunately, I agree, that can't help.
Okay. Do you have any more budget questions?
Not direct. I was just going to follow up on
sure.
this, though. I mean, are there programs that you can talk about?
In the elementary level, we have now, I know we've hired at least one, we might have 2 now, behavioral specialists, and we deal with at-risk kids. Most of our special needs kids that we call special needs are not necessarily cognitive special needs, what I would call cognitive or physically disabled in any way. They're more behavioral issues. And we're really working with the kids with behavioral issues specifically. And so we've got now a very strong strategic plan just with our special needs. Our new special needs director, Matt Kemmer, I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but Matt has built up, and he did a great job, very inclusive strategic plan just for special needs. And he's hitting the elementary schools pretty hard with getting counseling in place, learning what they call crisis intervention, emotional crisis intervention, and getting teachers trained so that everybody can deal with behavioral issues because they're not special needs anymore. They're just kids that come to our school, and we need to know how to deal with them. We got to stop labeling them. We got to stop taking them out of regular ed. Because if you can get them back into, transition them back into regular ed, then everybody wins. In the middle schools, we've started several programs, and I don't know the names of all of them. They all have some kind of an acronym that I can't remember. But right now, I know Merrill is going to be moving Alps Charter School out of that building. They're going to be moving it over to Tippler because the Lakeside or Green Meadow kids are going to be moving out of Tippler back to Lakeside Green Meadow School, which we're building onto. So that frees up, and the impetus was that we needed to free up space at Merrill to deal with the special needs and the behavioral issues with the middle schoolers there. And in order to institute a lot of these at-risk programs, you need room. You literally need a room with for like a kid and an adult, and then they work through all these issues. They pull the kids out, they work through a lot of these emotional issues one-on-one, and the goal is to get them back into regular ed. That is always the goal. And then in high school, starting in high school, I think starting at, I can't remember what age, you can start applying to other programs. Our Riverside program over at Fox Valley Tech is an incredible program. We take kids that never would have graduated. And not only do we get them back into school, we engage them, they do very well, and they graduate and they get a diploma. And they get a diploma from our school, even though they went to Riverside. So they have an Oshkosh diploma. We have several other programs like that. So we're constantly working with at-risk kids. That demographic is growing quickly. And that's the other reason that our budget is so strapped. We need more people in our district to be able to deal with behavioral issues from K to 12. And, we can't keep expecting, it used to be 1 or 2 kids in each class. We now have 10 kids in each class or 15 kids in each class. And teachers they can't do it all.
Right, and there's not, especially with EBD children, which are the emotionally behavioral children, a lot of the IEP programs that they put together and the teachers put together, that's not at every school. So you have, there's cost there with not having that at different, at all the schools. So bringing in Matt and having a specialist to actually know, so then those children aren't being left and they aren't being tossed here or there, and there's actually a plan for them. And a lot of those families, they don't have the resources. They don't know what to do. If your district's not helping you and showing you what to do with your kids, so they're absolutely at risk. So I think that the district is absolutely on the right track with having a specialized, putting out there to make sure that those kids are pulled in and taught.
You've mentioned a couple times about parents not knowing what to do or
Yes.
how to interact or whatever.
Yes.
Where do you see that as the problem beginning? Do you think that's a lack of communication at the district level?
It started there, I think. I think years ago there was an absolute wall between the district, with the community and the school board. I know there was negative. I had a negative, altercations with them. This is before Allison, and a lot of them came on the board, and it was one of the reasons why I think she went on the board. It was just there was no cohesive. I still think that the board is still fixing that. It is still an issue. The relationship between the community and the school board and the schools themselves, I think, is getting so much better. But for instance, I have a high schooler, and we're looking at college readiness. As a parent, I'm like, what do I do? Where do I go? What do I have? What do I, where do I go for scholarships? Where do I go for this? What's my time frame? Where do I put him in? And where does he want to go? And what's the best for what he wants to do? And he plays in sports, and he's in all these programs. And so that, I don't know. And I'm running for school board, and I don't know. So having, just having that information. And I know there are people at West, bless them, that are working on that because it is a problem. So in the high school level, here's a book. This is probably where you should go if this is what your child is doing. Here's something else. This is where your child can go if you're looking at technical, if you're looking at career, if you're looking at college. What guidelines you should get this in, and it starts in middle school. When you hit high school, the minute you start as a freshman, your GPA starts. You need that cumulative. In grade school, there's programs that are if you're not a very involved parent, there are programs that the kids, as parents, you don't even know are out there. There's so many things that your kids can get involved in. There's math, extra, there's teachers that do math outside that are, like it's an internet, for matches for kids. And then there's the reading program. Now my kids are involved in those because I'm involved. And I knew about those and I asked about this. But there's a good chunk of parents who just don't know. Somehow And I know that for the Oshkosh strategic plan, the number 3 top priority is communication. I am going to dig into that one and make sure that that continues, because the parents don't know. And if the parents know that we have these programs for them and that their children can get involved, again, they'll stay. And again, we won't have all these kids leaving if they understand. There are really good things in Oshkosh for kids. There's
Sure.
so many.
Sounds like these are something like that is a relatively easy fix, albeit
hope
perhaps
so.
time-consuming. Because it seems to me like
Right.
you just gather up the various resources and put them on the district's website
Right.
in like a little toolbox or something, you know?
Yeah.
A resource toolbox. But it's time involved
Yes.
is where you have to sit there
then
and
it costs money,
research
too.
each of these things. But I'm sure that there's people within the central office that, you know right where to go for these things.
Right.
And so that sounds like a simple fix. Obviously, money is the biggest thing facing the district. What are, in communication like that, what are some of the other things that are facing the district that might be kind of tough hurdles to clear?
Well, gosh, right now we're looking at a STEM school at Shapiro, and we're going to probably have that ready to rock by September, fall of next year.
And for people who don't know,
Yep.
STEM is science, technology, English.
Engineering.
And engineering,
That's
yes.
okay.
I'm
And
thinking
math.
English.
It's okay.
I'm thinking
It's
English.
okay. And English, ELA, English Language Arts, is all embedded in science, technology, engineering, and math. So it's not like the kids wouldn't have those, but
All right.
it's with that focus, and it's
Okay,
not.
so go on.
So a huge hurdle for us would be, if we were to do something as a board or as a district that would then stop that. I think we've been asking, the community has been begging for a STEM school. Everybody else has one, why can't we have one, right? And so that would be a huge hurdle. We're going to continue to try to offer choices. And in order for our teachers to want to innovate, we have to be able to get, and what I always say is get our foot off their necks. And so as administrators and as board members, I think it's our job to make sure that all of the things that come down on us from the state and the feds, trying to run our school district, that we protect them from that. And so how, if we can't make ends meet and we have to cut more teachers and we pile more kids into more classes and pull more class, I just see this whole thing crumbling. So we finally have made it. After 3 years of freezing and no steps in lanes and, only being able to negotiate for the CPI, and we're finally able to do that. And that's just to keep up with the cost of living.
Right.
But we did it the first time in 3 years, and then to have this fall down on us, it's like that could stop all of us. And I feel like it wouldn't be one step forward, one step back. It would be one step forward and like 2 or 3 steps back. I'm worried that we would see another exodus of both teachers and families.
Yeah.
So hopefully Scott Walker's watching.
I doubt that he is.
No?
I
Right.
can't even get him to come on the show.
Oh, well.
But, from your lips to God's ears, and maybe God can send a message to Scott.
Roundabout.
Yeah. Go ahead.
One of the things that people always talk about is accountability in schools. And I was looking at the DPI website today, and there are all these scorecards and
Yes.
scores.
Yes.
And I couldn't make head nor tails of them. It's because there's so much there. So if I used to be a parent of Oshkosh students, they're gone on to other things now. But if I were a parent, what do I look at? How do I navigate through all of that stuff?
Do you have a good answer for that
Well,
one?
you're the one who has the experience. So.
Gosh, yeah, it is really overwhelming, and I don't have a good answer for that. I know what I find important, and I know what I want for my kids, but I don't know how to actually go and find those pieces of information. The scorecard sounds like a really great idea. That's a great idea. It's like a report card for your school.
Right.
Let's go do that. Well, and then you implement it, and you see all of the things that you just never thought of, the unintended consequences. And I think the report card's a great idea. But now that we've implemented it, I'm like, but wait a minute. That doesn't really cover all of these other things. And so I don't know how to do it well. I don't know how to make a report card, a dashboard, as they like to call it, that shows a school. Because what is important to this community is not important to, people in Milwaukee or people in Madison maybe. We really are a tight-knit community, and we have certain values that we're trying to instill in our kids, and that's what's important to us. So my report card on the DPI website doesn't necessarily tell me whether or not this school is better for my kid than that school. So I don't know. I don't know how to do that other than site visits, which is more time for parents that have none.
Right.
an honest answer.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts about that?
I completely agree. A report card is it's a standard, very black and white. This is unless you go in and you ask questions, if there's a specific thing that you want your child to learn or a specific thing that you want instilled in your child, unless you go and ask, is this taught or how is this taught, you're not going to know. And that's a lot of time that you're going to go every school and list all the things that they do too. And I don't know how you would.
In the
It's
survey?
just like an interview.
The survey we asked.
I remember when my children were little and I was putting them at daycares.
Yes.
I went to every daycare and I had like
Yes.
102 questions. Like I asked, I was crazy, and they kind of looked at me funny. But I did like,
You're one of those moms.
how many diapers and how many, blah. Yeah, I was one of them. I was. And by my third one, I'm like, are they going to be alive when I pick them up? Great, So are they fed? Great.
Yeah.
So again, unless. I agree with Allison. If you want a specific thing and if you're looking for something, you're going to have to go ask. I don't know how that would. Yeah, that would.
Well, maybe it would just, and this is just my idea, I don't know how good it is, but, have the DPI's report card on your website, but then have an addendum to that says, this is obviously the statewide report card. This is how we compare to everybody else.
Yeah.
But here's what some of our other standards are. Here's
Yes.
what some of our other expectations
We're
are.
doing that.
Okay.
Yes, we're going to come. We're
Then I
coming
guess
up
it's
with
a
a
good
dash.
idea.
That's a great idea, Cheryl. And I will make sure that your name is underneath. But we are coming up with
This is my
dashboards.
intellectual property, right?
So I was going to say that on the survey that the UW Oshkosh did for us, for the parents and why they choice in and choice out. Oh, where was I going with that?
Convenience? What's on
No,
there?
we were talking about why. Oh, the communications, and they were saying, how do you find out about schools? You're choicing your kid in, or you're choicing. How do you find out? And they said they talk to other parents.
That
So
would make sense.
it's a whisper campaign,
Right.
and we can't.
Word of mouth.
That
Yeah.
can't be. I mean, because then misinformation.
Yes.
So we have to do a better job. So
Sure.
we're gonna. That's part of our goals.
Okay. Well, you guys have been campaigning since January. We're on March 19th right now, so you've been at this for a couple of months. And I'm sure you've been out there knocking on doors and so forth, but you've also been doing some district-wide PTO meetings, one of
Yes.
which you did earlier tonight,
Yes.
before you came here. So what is the message that you're hearing from folks in the community? What are you hearing from teachers in the community? What are they asking you guys about as they sort of interview you
Yeah.
as school board candidates?
Well, the teachers union wanted to know if we would spend fund balance.
Yes.
Because they know the budget's coming, and they are very nervous.
They discussed also, they were talking about some of the questions that they had were more particularly for Allison at that time, but they were discussing about their new pay. With
Oh, the new
with
compensation
the new
plan.
compensation plan,
Yeah.
with the points that they have to concern,
Yes.
and discussing back and forth what they thought on that too.
Yep. Yep.
And asking what was important to us, like what was important to me. They were asking obviously what my opinions are and what's important to me for my children's learning and
The PTO asked us, how are we making sure that our kids are globally ready when we don't even teach foreign languages until we get to middle school, and even then we only teach like one or two, depending on where you go.
Yep.
So that was a good one.
Yes.
They asked us, what did Wanda ask us tonight? Oh, she just asked us something, darn it.
Why are people leaving the district?
Yep,
Why are
what were
why
the
are
results
they
of the
just-
survey? How
Yep.
come we see this exodus of students, and it's dinging us $10,000 a head, every kid that leaves?
Yes.
So, our top priority now is making sure we don't lose kids and that we, retain the ones that we have and bring in new ones.
They were asking about the budget too.
Oh,
Just,
gosh.
same questions that everybody
We're all
else
scared.
has, yeah. And there was obviously personal questions about their own particular schools too, and asking what we were going to do when we get there. Going to the PTO meetings and listening to them,
Yeah.
and going to the schools and visiting the schools and actually listening to each school and what they need.
What are the voters concerned about besides the budget? What seems to be on the minds of the voters?
A lot of people are asking me about Common Core. What are you going to do about it?
Okay, well, that's next on my list.
Oh, good.
At one time, Scott Walker thought Common Core was
great,
fantastic.
yeah.
Now
Yeah,
he's
changed his
backpedaling
mind.
on that.
Yeah.
I don't know that much about it. I don't have kids in the district, and my dogs are just fine without knowing Common Core. So
Their Common Core is standard stuff.
that's right. Just tell us where to where to poop, where to pee,
and where to sleep.
Where's our food, and where's our dog bed? And can you throw a ball for us? But Common Core. I'll tell you, I've got a niece who last year was working on a math problem, and I'm sitting there looking at it, and I said, "What is that you're doing?" "Oh, that's math." I said, "That's math." Wow. I could not for the life of me figure it out. How is a parent supposed to help a child when you look at it and it looks like Greek to them?
Yes.
So now we got a governor who's backpedaling on Common Core. Jim Evans, one of your fellow candidates, thinks Common Core is good. I realize you have to have some standards, but Common Core seems very difficult to understand. So how are you going to teach kids to pass or meet Common Core standards when you've got to have help from parents who don't or an aunt who doesn't understand it?
Right. So with the math, I'll go right to the math. So the Common Core, from what I understand, it's the Common Core standards, and it's for math and literacy across the nation, so that all students are being taught at least the standard. So it'd be good for like military families from going state to state. I have friends that came state to state, and every time they moved, their kids, they had to go to this grade or back and forth, or they didn't know this or didn't know that. So I believe in the theory of Common Core and having a standard for every grade, what they have to have learned in every grade. I think it's a good idea. I do agree with that. You have to make them ready for life and skills and college and careers. But I do believe that the test that they take here, the language that they use can't be the same language that they use in another district. It's got to be the same problems, but maybe different, ways of putting it. I think that's a big issue, is how they test. And there's so many tests. It's ridiculous. It's crazy. We are spending so much time. My kids didn't even come home with homework for the first 3 weeks of school because it was testing. I'm like, that's crazy. And the teachers need to do it, and it's teachers you can't even, and the poor teachers are just sitting and testing too. So it is an issue all around. Now, the idea behind the math, because my kids came home and it's like a drawing, and like two problems is a whole page.
It's hieroglyphics.
Yeah, right. So because I did go to school and I'm like, what is this? I don't even know, because I'm like, no, blah, this minus this there. 2-3 lines, we're done. Let's go. Borrow, carry. Yeah. But then when they do bring it home, because I had to have my high schooler teach me this. I'm like, okay, so my son Chance, I'm like, teach me this so I can help our kid, his sisters. So he's showing it to me, and it makes sense because it makes you analyze it and have probable cause. So they're trying to make you use your brain, not just A plus B, black and white. It's just simple. They're trying to make the younger kids, as they're younger, learn and analyze things and use their brains in a different pattern to make them ready for bigger things. That's, from my understanding, that's why they're doing it. But it's when parents don't know. Now, Lakeside, for my younger kids, we had a literacy night, and we actually had a table set aside to help parents learn that, so that they know how to help because I had no idea.
So the parents are now having to go back to school, in a sense.
Right.
Yes.
to learn their kids how to survive in school. And that, too, I'm sure if I had kids, I would be frustrated as hell right now.
It is frustrating.
I'm working a job, I'm trying to do this, there's not enough time for all this. And at the end of the day, none of us, I'm sure, had Common Core when we were in school.
Nope.
And I think it's safe to say we all turned out pretty fine, So I don't know why we just can't kind of go back to basics with some things. I understand times have changed, and the requirement of money has changed, but some things, it just seems, forget Common Core. Let's talk about common sense. Let's go back to common sense. That's just my 2 cents worth.
Right.
One of the questions, I know we're out of time, or soon we'll be out of time, and we've been asking this question of other candidates because it's something that was proposed to me. There is, obviously, our racial diversity within the county, or county, school district, whatever, is changing somewhat, and we are becoming more diverse. What is the school district's plan with regard to hiring more people of color or of minorities? Because when it was asked of Stad Mack, the superintendent, he said there is no plan, he has no plan, there's no need for a plan. And that, I think, is an unacceptable answer.
I agree.
So, what do
he's
we
right.
do?
There's no plan. There are several board members that are pushing for a diverse background in the teachers that we do hire. The problem, I know it's going to surprise you, is licensure. So let's say we have the biggest sailing program, student or youth-led sailing program in North America, in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. We have that now. We run 2,300 kids through this program every year. So wouldn't it make sense that maybe we would go out to Annapolis and hire a teacher that is a great teacher and has a sailing background, so that person could come in and take over that sailing program and run it, right? Well, you can't, because that person doesn't have a license to teach in Wisconsin. And that, to me, these are small hurdles. So we're going to continue to push. I agree with you 100%. From what I'm learning in the 4 years that I've been doing this, is that the number one thing that students need is a relationship with their teacher. If they don't have a relationship at home, the only way they can succeed is with forming a relationship with an adult at school, and that's usually their teacher. I have a very difficult time thinking that the new diverse population that is in Oshkosh is going to be able to relate to our 90+% teachers that were born and raised and went to UW Oshkosh. So I feel very strongly we need to diversify. So I agree with you 100%. I'll keep pushing.
Okay, excellent. What are your thoughts?
I agree.
That was simple enough.
Yes.
I do, yes. I absolutely, I think it's important. I want my children to grow up with diversity. I want them to see that, absolutely. And in every aspect of the community, not just their fellow students.
So is licensure a hurdle across the board, or there's some?
You're asking me?
Yes.
No. We can attack that hurdle. We can jump over that hurdle. We do emergency licenses all the time. We can do it. We're not comfortable doing it. It scares us. It makes us nervous. But I think that if we try it, and we might be able to get good at it. So I think we can do it.
What do you mean, Allison, emergency licensures? What do you mean by
We
that?
have people that, we lost a lot of administrators. We lost 16 in that one, 2-year period. Anyways,
Yeah, it was bad.
we were taking anybody, that had a pulse. We're like, come on, you got to get in here. And these people were already on the track to become administrators, but they didn't have their administrator licenses. So at one time we had several administrators that were under the DPI, what they call an emergency licensure. And actually the DPI doesn't even call it that anymore. They call it something else. But essentially it's a 1-year deal where at the end of that year you can take the position with this, emergency DPI license, but it's with the agreement that you get whatever you have, what you have to, go through the course or work, or you have to, take the test or whatever to get that full license. And they all have.
Okay. All right. The district recently held some public hearings on changing the start and stop time for school, because you got some kids starting and stopping at one time, and others, sometimes in the same family, starting and stopping at a different time. It's creating havoc within a household because you got parents working, and then you got these different start and stop times. But the district is doing it as a cost-saving measure because of busing.
Yes.
Is there any middle of the road where you could kind of still save some money, but still make it easier for parents, especially with multiple pupil households?
That's a problem.
Well, here's what we heard, because we had several
Which is
open sessions.
disappointing. It's, I got so many complaints. I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. No, go for
I
it.
got so many. When I was out, because this was all coming around the same time I was out campaigning and getting signatures. Almost all the parents, everybody I was talking to was asking that. Now I have 3 children. I have a high schooler who's very involved. He's in 3 sports. He's part of the We Are Oshkosh. He's in AP classes. He's in UW classes. He's a very high, achieving student. So he's going to school at 6:37 in the morning to do, to go do mock trials, which he was on the first team for Oshkosh West to do it. So they were meeting at 6 in the morning for mock trials because they had to go to do that. And then he had swimming at 7, and then he started school. And then after school he had swimming again because they were out of water and they were in. And then he's in track and he's in football. And he's doing all of these other things. So he's not getting any more sleep. He's just going to school even earlier now. So that was a problem, because then you have these kids, you have your high achieving kids that that don't have the time, and that they're not getting as much sleep, and they're up later doing homework because they got home later. And then you've got kids that they're getting out in 6th, 7th, and 8th hour, 3 hours now, to go to sports, especially like baseball, where they have 2-3 games a week, or basketball. Swimming, they have 2 swim invites a week, or track. So we had, my son had UW biology in 8th hour. We had to move it to the beginning of class, or calculus. We had to move it. He can't miss those classes because he can't miss lab. Yeah. So, and the teachers were really good about working through that. And then the younger kids are coming home before the older ones. So then you don't have babysitters there. And then I do know that the co-busing overpromised, because the beginning of the year when the buses started, it was a mess. And then they changed it, and we didn't save as much money as we did, as we were supposed to. So, and I know that they did have those forums, and I'm quite shocked at the low turnout that all of those had, because so many people were complaining. So obviously it's not as big as an issue.
Nobody showed up.
Well, yeah, nobody showed up.
I think, I mean, it's no excuse.
Yeah.
And we're down to 2 minutes, I'm told.
Sorry.
No, that's fine. That's what you're here for. Tell us what you think.
That's a heated one for me.
You know, in trying to defend some of the parents, and I don't really know any, but I'm just saying, you know, maybe it's just like voter apathy. You know, people just probably get to the point where they just say, you know what difference is my voice or several of our voices going to make? You know, this is a big organization we're dealing with. The school district they're not going to listen to us, and so why bother? And that's unfortunate, but yet there are complaints out there. And so, I don't know, to just say, well, they didn't come to the meeting, so it must not be that big of a deal. Obviously, you know it's that big of a deal because people are complaining in other venues. So I don't know. There's probably not an easy answer for that either.
No.
We are instituting a 0 hour at the high school.
What does that mean for people?
Well, for kids that are on sports that are, you know, concerned. At the high school, the major issue was that the athletes were having to leave and missing at least 1, if not 2 hours. And so they're going to institute a 0 hour this year, we think. We're going to try and get teachers to come in before, you know, the official start of the day so that they can get some of their work done and get help and whatever. So
I have teachers come to me too and say, it's
Yeah.
unfair for them. They can't teach because half their students aren't there, and then they're held accountable for that. And then they have to come in on their own time to teach.
And how does that work with meeting their face-to-face time requirements at a state level?
Yeah, it's hard. It
So,
is, yeah.
that'll be at both high schools?
yes, well, I think so. It's in the works right now. We're going to
Okay.
figure out how to
All right.
get that done.
Miles, do you have a very short question?
Never.
Or a short question, a question that might get a short answer?
Well, I'll try. The technology referendum, how's that working? Great, right? That's a short answer. No, say more.
It's so far, I mean, where we're at right now is all those high school students should be 1-to-1 at this point. I know next year is the middle schoolers, and then we'll do the grade school 1-to-1. High schoolers, you know, they're all coming back with positive feedback. The teachers thought that day of training was really good. They like it. So all in all, I think thumbs up.
Okay.
Thank you, Oshkosh.
Excellent.
Yep.
Very good. Why don't you each take about 20 seconds, look into camera
You go first.
one,
Okay.
and tell people why they should go to the polls and vote for you.
Where do I start? I just an average parent that I want to bring your value and your what's important to you and your families to the school board. I want as a family and what's important to us, I want them to be heard across the entire community. And I think having all 3 kids in 3 different schools and having that experience as a parent, I'll be able to experience with the community what's important to them and their students.
Okay, I have been on the board for 4 years, and I think we've moved really far in the last 4 years. In fact, when I look back, I'm really surprised at how far we've come, and I want to keep going. So keep me on the board.
All right, excellent. Thanks to both of you for being
Thank
here.
you. Thanks.
And I'm sure we'll have you back after, like, the first 100 days. Right on.
Yes.
Something like
then I'll
that
breathe
to
better.
chat.
State of the
some
board
more.
address.
Anyway, whoever you're going to vote for, please at least go to the polls
Please vote.
on
Yes, please
Tuesday,
vote.
April
Please.
7th, and vote, or vote absentee or early if that is an option that works for you. Thanks to Miles for being
Great.
here. It's always a
Thanks for
pleasure.
having me.
And of course, thanks to you for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Until then, take good care. Keep your eye on us. We've got our eye on Oshkosh.